Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Caw and I am over the moon to be joined
Over the moon again.
again. I know tomorrow there'll be a fresh one, I
You're
promise.
you dug into the drawer for cliches yesterday, and you've actually dug into the same drawer and picked out the same cliche tonight.
You've exposed my inadequate vocabulary. But I am joined by Keith Jackson and Fraser Wilson. Guys, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good evening.
Fraser, you all right?
Very well, thank you. Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight.
Feeling the cold though. Actually, got the jumpers out now. I'm moving into the autumn wardrobe. Having enjoyed a late Indian summer last week. That's as it's Baltic out there.
Mental, isn't it? Mrs. W's off the heating on the day, so it's beans and toast for the rest of the week here.
That's it. That's the dire straits.
Before we talk about football, am I the only one that kind of likes that it's a bit colder now?
Yes.
No, I just think the summer's so sweaty and horrible. And
okay, that's enough detail, Daniel.
That's it. Well, Fraser, it's particularly good that you're here because you were at the Rangers press conference today with John Gilligan.
And it's not often anybody says that.
Correct. I'll take that one. Thanks. Is this recorded?
John Gilligan gave his address today, the new Rangers chairman, and he talked a lot about Dave King, which has been a topic of conversation on the Hotline Live many times. Before I bring you guys in, I'll actually just read out some of his comments. Gilligan said, "I think he, as in Dave King, has got it wrong. I think it's unfair. What exactly is he not good? What exactly is he saying wrong? Give us a plan and tell me. If Dave had some terrific plan to tell me where we all are going wrong, then we would read the plan and we would consider it. I'm trying to think, has any other director or any person said anything about Dave? No." And he goes on. Obviously, there's a much fuller extended quotes in Fraser's wonderful piece on Record Sport Online. But yeah, it was some interesting comments, Fraser.
Yes, he said a lot because he was asked a lot. He wasn't. We're probing away, and he wasn't really giving much away at first. Very complimentary towards the man that he said gave him one of the happiest days of his life when he asked him to join his gang in ousting Mike Ashley nearly 10 years ago. But then obviously with the came in with a big clunking fist saying, "Look, I would ask Dave King to behave like a proper shareholder, basically to shut up, stop stirring,
sit down and shut up, Dave." That's the subject.
Put him right back in his box. Did it well, to be fair, and he's got a point, hasn't he? I mean, I don't think the Rangers punters are too pleased seeing this kind of dirty laundry aired across the back pages every second day. And to be fair, it's all coming from Dave King's side, isn't it? Seems desperate to get back into the chairmanship, despite the fact that it didn't take him much to up and leave at the height of the COVID crisis just 4 years ago. So, Gilligan was very kind of restrained at first, but finally gave us what we wanted and told Dave King to shut up and get back in his box and forget an EGM and forget becoming chairman again, because it's very unlikely, he said.
What did you make of it, Keith?
It's more than very unlikely. It's just not going to happen. I just don't. At a time when Rangers don't have their troubles to seek, Dave King jumps out like a jack-in-the-box and starts throwing grenades around from his bunker in Johannesburg. It's just unhelpful. I think he's misread the crowd, misread the room, and that he probably believed that he could do the old Pied Piper routine and everybody would jump in line and follow him, because that's what happened previously. But Dave King's a busted flush in the eyes of vast majority of Rangers fans now. By the way, the current board is not much better in terms of how they're viewed by the supporters. But Dave King constantly bickering from the sidelines and saying that he would do it better. And, they've heard it all before. It's empty rhetoric and it's unhelpful. And it just continues this sort of a picture of chaos that John Bennett, during his time in the chair, and I know there'll be a lot of fans that are highly critical of John Bennett's time as chairman, and I think unfairly so. one thing that he was desperate to do was inject a bit of calm authority, remove the chaos, stop fighting with everybody, stop starting fights in empty rooms with authorities, with other clubs, you know, even in-house. They've been fighting like rats in a sack for too long now. And John Bennett was very keen to try and recalibrate the whole thing and you know, make it more user-friendly, if you like. Just make Rangers less of a soap opera. And ultimately, it became the ultimate soap opera because of what happened with the stand, the redevelopment, Ibrox having to shut down, Rangers being kicked out their own place and having to go homeless for a period. That's a really sad and bitter irony, and I feel sorry. I've said it before. I feel sorry for John Bennett that he's had to leave the position. Obviously, health must come first, but also under a bit of a cloud. He was moving the club in the right direction, and then along comes Dave, and he spots an opportunity because John Bennett, who he says is I think he described him as a friend, a close friend. I don't think John Bennett will be thanking anybody for Dave King, you know, trying to create this stushy again. It's unhelpful, and I struggle to see the strategy in it because it was never going to work. It was never going to, as John Gilligan correctly said, there was no mechanisms, no lever for for an EGM other than for the board to call one of them on their own. It just wasn't going to happen. I suspect that Dave King will have a plan somewhere. I'm not sure what it is. I think he's probably first and foremost trying to protect his own shareholding. But you know, I did say, I wrote a piece the other week, and at the end of it, I said, if John Bennett's legacy is that this now feels like the time for radical change, for outside investment, for fresh eyes, for a more strategic leadership model to be introduced, something more modern and contemporary, take away the sort of bowling club approach that I think is going on, and the sort of, you know, this current model of fan ownership. It's just wealthy fan ownership, but it is fan ownership. It's not working. And they really need a real modernisation, a change of approach. And that can only come from outside investment. And I've noticed they're still very guarded about that. John Gilligan saying, "Oh, we wouldn't want one person to come in." And the more and more you look at Rangers, the more and more it feels as if that's exactly what is required. You know, one leading voice, one guy. Celtic have got Dermot Desmond. He calls the ultimate shots, but he's got in place his real crack team of executives, a top chairman, used to be the chief exec. Everything is perfectly structured at Celtic, and I think Rangers need to move towards something much more like that, and as quickly as possible. And if that would be the legacy of John Bennett standing down, if this does create an opportunity for change, then, you know, I think change is required. It's just not change back to the bad old days of Dave King. It's a completely different reset that the club needs to have.
I was going to say that because if there was one thing I was looking for from today, other than him biting back at Dave King, was maybe something a bit more revolutionary, as you say, something different in terms of investment, fresh investment. But it was just more a message of, you know, keep calm and carry on. Let's stabilise. Let's settle. Steady the ship.
John Gilligan's the continuity candidate there, isn't he? And I'm not sure that continuity is really what anybody at Rangers needs right now, because if it's a continuation of the missteps that have been made over the last period of time, you know, the Rangers fans are growing tired of it. They're growing tired of some of their own players. They're growing tired of Dave King and the interventions. They're growing tired of the constant bickering. I mean, I compare Dave King. Dave King is now the directorial Cyril Dessers. They've had enough. They've seen it. They know it doesn't work, and they want something different. Well, so that's essentially where they're at just now. I think this club is now crying out for more radical and a modernisation, radical change, and a sense of modernisation, and that's going to have to come from out with the room. because it's not in the room. And I don't think they can continue to struggle along like this indefinitely. Because
Gilligan's words today were that if there's to be investment to come, which it will come, his words were, it's that the current investors are ready to go to the well again. So it's exactly what you've just said. That there's nothing fresh, there's nothing new about it. It's the same guys putting their hand in their pocket again. And so if there's punters
he did
used to cling on to, I don't think
he did say, Fraser, that they do have people who have contacted them from outside that are looking, but then he was a bit guarded in saying he wouldn't want to hand over control. That's a mistake, because these guys have actually done really well. They deserve a lot of credit for picking the thing up from where it was 9-10 years ago, sort of building it back up. They've managed to win a title, they've won a couple of cups, but it is now time. The Rangers can't move on to the next level without giving up some of the power. And that's what these guys ultimately are going to have to be prepared to do. And granted, what they can't do is just hand over the keys to another charlatan, because we've seen what's happened in the past there. But there's no reason why they can't be having proper, detailed discussions with whatever potential investors are out there to get a feel for what the future would look like under a new regime, and then making a decision. This one, and we know that these guys are certainly acting in what they believe to be the best interest of the club. Well, find the next one. Find the person that can elevate this to a level that is beyond the current board. That's what they have to do. But that does involve giving up some of the power, and maybe they enjoy it too much. Rangers addicts, isn't it?
To be fair to Bennett, I suppose in recent months they have brought that wage bill down. They've cut their cloth. They've got that foundation now that they're ready to take that next step if the right person comes along. I mean, it was only 2 years ago the wage bill was higher than Celtic's, which was extraordinary. So they brought that right down. Obviously, they made a bit of loss and some players heading out the door. But I think that they've got the foundation there ready now to take that next step. But as Keith says, it's going to have to be something a wee bit different. It's going to have to be something a bit more drastic than just the same old guys putting their hands in their pockets again.
I hesitate to use the name or throw in the name Sir David Murray, because it will probably go down like a lead balloon with the Rangers supporters out there. But he did say, and he would use this phrase, you need to change the menu. And he would use it in terms of, whether it was a freshening up with the first 11 every couple of years. But that same rule now applies to the Rangers board. They need to change the menu. They are the menu, and they need to change. They need to find a way of re-energising the entire football club, of reconnecting with a support which is in danger of being kind of knocked out with apathy. That's a really worrying state of affairs for Rangers. Even sometimes it's better if there's anger there or frustration or. But if it all turns into apathy, if people sort of shrug their shoulders and don't care anymore, that's the worst case scenario. So I think that it is time, and I really hope that they are having a look outside their own blue room, a look outside what they know and who they know, and maybe a look outside their own comfort zone, because Rangers, I keep saying it, they require it.
You mentioned, Keith, the kind of reaction from Rangers fans and how they're sick of it. Andy Cairns on Record Sports Facebook has written in saying, this is not how we do things. Take it off the back pages of papers and talk in a dignified way to each other. It's time to be united. Thomas Clark follows up with, why don't all the people in question get round the table and work out what's best for Rangers and stop the fighting? This is not the publicity. We want to be dignified. I mean, you mentioned there, Keith, obviously that Dave King, there's not going to be an EGM. What options does Dave King have now? Seems to me he doesn't really have any.
He'll just make more noise.
Aye.
He'll just agitate on the sidelines. I'm surprised, in fact, that, because John Gilligan addressed the situation today, surprised that we don't already have Dave King's latest statement. Remember the period of statement tennis, statement o'clock, etc., etc. I'm surprised that Dave King hasn't responded to John Gilligan, and I probably fully expect there will be a response of some sort of statement made or whatever over the next 24 hours. But again, it's just this level of noise and anger and kind of hubristic blasts of sound bites. That's the opposite of what Rangers need, and for that reason, I think it is good that John Gilligan's in there and he's trying to calm the whole thing down and kind of turn down the noise a little bit, and that's what he needs to do in the short term. But in the medium to long term, they do need to be taking a serious look about how they can move this on, and how they can get the club in a position to challenge Celtic, because Celtic right now are disappearing over the horizon.
Mm-hmm. I think you're right, both of you guys, when you say that fans are a bit sick of it and they want to talk about football, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Hello.
Fraser, the Hearts job is once again available. Stephen Naismith has obviously been let go from Tynecastle. I mean, Keith, you wrote a magnificent column today on Tony Bloom and his Star Lizard approach to who could be the next gaffer. But Fraser, who do you think would fit the bill?
This pains me. I'm agony admitting this.
No
Because I've
pressure.
read Keith's column as well. Keith's stolen my idea. This revolutionary idea that the one guy that has consistently delivered success at St John's, at his 3 Scottish clubs, and who's loyal to the core, Derek McInnes, is what Hearts are screaming out for. It's what Hibs were screaming out for through their past 5 managerial appointments, whatever it's been. This is a man that took it as a rookie, took St Johnstone up the Premier League and kept them there comfortably. Got the Aberdeen job off the back of a difficult spell at Bristol City, and year after year after year had Aberdeen in the top 3, if not finishing second, competing well in Europe. Cup finals, they were at Hampden at least twice a season, Aberdeen under Derek McInnes, and those days have gone since he left. And then now at Kilmarnock, the longest serving Premiership manager currently, with two years, 7 months at Kilmarnock. Because he's loyal, because he's successful. Honestly, I would love to see, and I'm going to upset a lot of Kilmarnock fans here. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. I would love to see Derek McInnes given the reins, given it a shot at another one of Scotland's big forces. Kilmarnock are a big club, achieve great things in the last couple of years under Derek McInnes, and have a great support. But Hearts are on a different level, and I think with the level of investment Hearts have got available to them, the stadium, the fan base, I think Derek McInnes could deliver special things for Hearts. I think it's a no-brainer. I really want to see somebody give Derek McInnes a chance.
But this is it. The supercomputer must be heard. So,
I'm all for that as well, by the way, to throw up fresh names.
I'm all for it. But sometimes the answer is just so obvious that, you don't need to run it through a data processor to come up with that. I'd be surprised, actually, if Derek's name wouldn't come up in Star Lizard's algorithms if they punched in the requirements for the Hearts manager's job. I'd be astonished if it didn't come up. But you in making managerial points, yes, I look, nobody's going to knock Brighton's philosophy and their structure, because they're the best in the business at it. So it could well be they could come up with something. This algorithm could come up with the perfect candidate. But you would need to then ignore what's staring you right in the face. And it's this guy that just continually delivers. He knows the job inside out. He knows the league inside out. He's just a successful guy. He's taken Europe from the second tier of Scottish football into... he's taken Kilmarnock from the second tier of Scottish football into Europe in no time. He just continually delivers in terms of, the evidence is piling up behind him, and it has done over, I don't know how long he's been in management now, a long time, nearly the best part of 20 years. Yeah.
17 years, aye.
Yeah. So why would you not? I mean, why would you not have the conversation with Derek McInnes? Now, you might have to win him over. We've seen previously, Derek's one of these guys, if he feels that he's got a very good working relationship with the guys running the football club, as he does have with Billy Bowie, maybe he might be reluctant to throw himself into a situation, because Hearts has been a bit of a basket case from time to time. maybe be reluctant, but it's a conversation you want to have. It's a conversation you have to have. And I'd be astonished if Hearts aren't already sort of back channeling to discover if there's an appetite there for Derek to get involved in the discussion, regardless of what Star Lizard comes out with. And no, you're absolutely right. You do not ignore what Brighton might advise you to do in Tony Bloom, because they are so good at structuring their own business down there. That you have to take on their advice. You have to look at what they're saying. And I keep coming back to, if Derek McInnes, if his name isn't getting churned out by the supercomputer, then the programme's wonky.
Hi. See, Keith, by the way, I think the disco lights are going off behind you there. You might need to do a lap of the office again. But
I need to go and stick 50p in the meter.
Record sports.
McInnes is that no nonsense. It's so much gravitas, isn't he? That if Hearts have been a bit of a basket case over the years, he wouldn't stand for it, and he would sort that out, as well as sorting out the team. He would sort out the club. He knows exactly what it takes to be successful in that top tier. And honestly, I think even with the Europa Conference League campaign that's about to start, I think a bit like Celtic, it's there for Hearts to take if they want it. Looking at the fixtures they got, surely that would have Derek McInnes salivating a chance to get back into Europe so quickly. Looking at the fixtures they've got, and potentially take Hearts to that next stage, because they've massively underperformed this season. But I still think there's a core of a good squad there.
Well, I think it's important to remember as well, Kilmarnock have been good for Derek McInnes. Derek McInnes has been good for Kilmarnock. I think he's been reinvigorated. It was all getting a little bit stale and samey at Aberdeen, and the fans had decided wrongly that they needed change. The club needed change. Look what happened. Be careful what you wish for, etc., etc. They've only now got a guy in that looks like he might be capable of achieving some of the stuff that Derek McInnes achieved during his time there. Kilmarnock have been great. It's reinvigorated him. He was prepared to step down into that division because he was convinced by Billy Bow's strategy and how he saw his place at Rugby Park. And by when I say by how he saw his place, he is the guy. He's the driving force. Billy Bow's more than happy to step back and just let him lead the football club. Mm-hmm. Hearts are crying out for it. Hearts are crying out for exactly that. So yeah.
You know what? Stephen Naismith's accent is another case of the second season syndrome for the club that finishes third, isn't it? Nobody's been able to back up by doing it again since Derek McInnes with Aberdeen. Another reason why I think it's such an obvious choice, but it sounds like I'm pushing him too hard now. No, I'd be quite interested to see Alex Neil back north of the border as well, to be honest. I think Alex Neil's a good manager, and eventually he's going to have to take the jump with somebody.
Yeah, well, but the interesting bit for me is you mentioned Stephen Naismith did a very good job finishing third. Maybe he was pushing it an open door a little bit because the competition wasn't superb last season for third place. But he still did it, and he still had to get Hearts there, and he did achieve it. So that can't be taken away from him. But ultimately, when you start a season the way you started this one, what have you got to argue your case? Is that all the evidence? You can only refer to one season, because then you're in a situation. Well, who knows? Then was last season lucky? Are we locked into a season-long struggle here with the potential to disappear and fall over the abyss into the second tier? There was nothing. Stephen Naismith had no way of backing up his own argument, whereas Derek McInnes has got a back catalogue, success after success. He's proven, which is why there's no panic going on at Kilmarnock just now, even though his record isn't a great deal better than the Stephen Naismiths at the start of this season. I think they're Killie are only 1 point above Hearts, albeit having played a game less. But there's no clamour, there's no panic. And why is that? It's because they know they've got a guy in charge that's going to sort it out. It's been difficult, he said, grappling with twin campaigns and domestically in Europe, and Kilmarnock really not used to that. Maybe don't have the squad for it.
Yeah, 6 games Kilmarnock had in Europe.
But there's not. You wouldn't think for a single solitary second that Billy Bow's looking at going, "I need to make a change of manager here." He knows that Derek McInnes will come good. That they'll get into their rhythm, they'll get into their stride, and they'll start moving their way up that league. And that's the difference. Stephen Naismith couldn't point to anything behind last season, whereas Derek McInnes can point time and time and time and time and time again. He's done it.
Naismith was a strange appointment, and by the way, I need to say he was so good to deal with. I dealt with Hearts a lot in the last year. Really articulate, always answered questions. On Saturday again, it was at St Mirren when it was toxic at the end. Jeez, it was toxic against Dundee United at Tynecastle. It was 10 times worse with just 1,500 jambos in the way end at St Mirren. But he would have sat there all day and answered their questions, and he could tell, he knew deep down what was coming. You know, he says what will be, will be. Mm-hmm. Almost saying inevitable. He cannot defend 8 defeats in a row, no matter who you are. He saw it coming, but he sat there, he answered all the questions, he's articulate as always. I think he speak to anyone that's worked with him, and they genuinely, Craig Gordon again said on Saturday, very good coach, he'll have a great career. So interesting to see where he goes from here, but my point was going to be that it was a very strange appointment after they binned Robbie Neilson. And bizarrely, I remember Andrew McKinlay did a presser after binning Neilson and taking on Naismith on a temporary basis. And he name-checked Barry Robson's success at Aberdeen, having stepped up for the youths. I thought, that just sounds like you're copying Aberdeen, and we know how that ended up. So Naismith's going the same way, so they're going to need to do something different. Something different is a tried and tested, which brings us back to you-know-who. Sound like Derek McInnes fan club here, don't we?
Well, look, let me take you through some of the reactions we've had from fans, and I should say there's been a plethora of comments on the Hearts job, and if you want to get involved, please do so in the comment section below. Ricardo Jones watching live on Facebook. Why don't Hearts go for Ole Gunnar? I assume he means Solskjaer. Alex Neil won't do good at Hearts. We've got this one as well. Ruth Fraser simply says, who'd want it? They'd only last a few games and be sacked. John Kennedy would be a safe pair of hands, but I reckon St Johnstone might be in for him. Chris McD, who I honestly thought was at the wind-up here, but I don't know if he is. Levine knows the club better than anyone. Has a great relationship with Budge and was unfairly treated. I think he deserves another chance at it. That would be box office. I just finished, though. Dennis Gurr, who represents a lot of McInnes comments we've had on our social media channels. Derek McInnes won silver at Aberdeen, regular European football, done a good job at Kelly with a smaller budget. I'm sorry, one else as well. David Black, Tony Docherty, he wants as the manager.
Yeah, Tony Docherty, obviously formerly Derek McInnes' right-hand man.
Of course.
Right? And you can tell why Tony Docherty has made such a great impact at Dundee. It's because he's spent so much time learning what a proper manager does, and learning from the guy sitting across the office table from him. That's not to take anything away from what Tony Docherty's doing now. He's out on his own, but that's the background. And I just think we're talking a lot, and obviously this Tony Bloom thing and the potential investment. Could you imagine what Derek McInnes might do if he was given the sort of cheat code in the transfer market that Brighton are using and armed with 10 million quid? I mean, that's beyond his wildest dreams. It was something these are numbers and potential kind of potential tools for the transfer market that he was never given at any point during his time at Aberdeen. If he was given £10 million to spend and this access to Brighton's database, are you telling me that he wouldn't put up a real challenge? Because I'm convinced that he would. I tell you what, Hearts certainly wouldn't be outside the top 3 at any point. But Derek McInnes would fancy his chances of probably getting in between and separating the old firm. And I wouldn't bet against him doing it.
His recruitment record at Aberdeen was really, really good, and again at Kilmarnock, to be fair.
I know, but with 10 million quid,
that's what I'm saying.
Access to Brighton, it's
100%. It was actually really good at reinventing his Aberdeen teams when he lost 2 men at the end of the season. He must have done it 3 or 4 times, which is the ultimate test of a manager. But he had that work ethic, that desire to succeed. Honestly, I feel like we're going over the top now with Derek McInnes.
I think so. I mean, it does feel a little bit. I mean, welcome to this show sponsored by D McInnes Rugby. So we should. I mean, and that's the other thing as well. You have to be respectful of the fact that he's employed by Command and has, I keep coming back to it, a very good relationship with Billy Bowie. So Hearts would have to attract Derek McInnes. And you know, even then, remember when he felt he was on the verge of going to Rangers, everything was signed, sealed. He then had the misfortune of a meeting with Dave King and realised that that wasn't going to work for him. There was going to be a level of interference that wasn't going to make it work. And he went back to Aberdeen because he had a very good working relationship with the chairman there. So these things are important to him because he does consider the details. But I still do think the lure of Hearts and the possibilities, and with the added kind of cherry on the top of the cake of the potential Brighton investment, why wouldn't you want to have that conversation?
Yeah, just we should say as well that Alex Neil at the minute remains, I think, the bookies' favourite, certainly with odds checker. So it'll certainly be an interesting couple of weeks if you're a Hearts fan.
Strange, Alex Neil said when he's been linked to other jobs that he's continually said he sees his next job back down in England, where he's always had reasonable success in the Championship. But Hearts is a different beast.
Aye, that's true.
Said, especially with this incoming investment. So whether that would tempt him, I'd like to see Alex Neil take a job up here again to see how he's developed, because he did well at Hamilton, then did very well down at Norwich. So it'd be interesting to see Alex Neil in charge of Hearts, actually, just to see how far they could go. Because you just get the feeling, like Aberdeen, they're in a good place financially, big club, just waiting for the right manager to take them to that next level.
Ricardo on the comment section, I think he's saying that David Moyes is available, but I think that might be a little bit out of Hearts' budget, perhaps.
Yeah, probably.
Going back to issues on the park, we obviously had the hotline live yesterday after the Celtic Falkirk game, which was a brilliant game. We talked, obviously, Keith, about a lot of the positives, and you know, Falkirk were excellent. Celtic obviously got through. A lot of the comments we've had today on Record Sports social media channels has been pretty negative in a Celtic sense, particularly for 2 or 3 of the fringe players that were playing yesterday. And it kind of looks like maybe a few of them have played themselves out of contention. I mean, Alex Valle had a comment here from Colin Mathers. Valle definitely looks powder puff. Made Laxalt look like Roberto Carlos at times yesterday. Mike saying Stephen Welsh still starts for Celtic. Beyond comprehension. He can neither tackle nor pass. He's absolutely woeful. Mark Grubb here, yesterday's game showed that Ralston, Welsh and Palmer simply aren't good enough for Celtic. Trusty and Valle need more time, but it was disjointed. And Patrick, Big Navroki must be stinking training out every day to be so far bombed out that he's behind Welsh. And sorry, Conrad here as well. How bad is Navroki if Welsh is keeping out the side? I don't get it. One is homegrown, the other costs 4.3 million. You forget actually that Navroki cost. That's a lot of money for Celtic.
Yeah, but listen, Brendan Rodgers, I'm going to throw in a tired old cliche. Brendan Rodgers gets to see these guys in the training ground every day. I think Celtic fans, I think they should have learned by now they should be able to trust his judgment on a football player.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind Big Welsh. I think he's I'm not be unkind to say he's limited. He's never going to be a top class centre half, but he's a reliable enough guy. And if Celtic are in need of, you know, throwing, if they've got suspensions or injuries, Welsh can step up. And that's why he would have been first on the list to step up yesterday. I actually think, you know, and I know Celtic fans will be looking at Valle and Trusty and hoping that they come good, but that was the major problem that Celtic had yesterday, was on the left-hand side of the defence, between the pair of them. Not so much Welsh for me, but maybe it's easier to turn on a Tony Ralston or a Welsh. Ralston's another, you know, how many times does he need to prove that, okay, he might not be everybody's first choice fullback, but when required, he can step into that team and be more than relied upon. And I would put Welsh not far behind him in that category, to be perfectly honest with you. What would worry me a little bit was, and you have to caveat that by saying they haven't played a lot of football, obviously, but Trusty and Levi on that left hand side, you know, there was cart and horse getting driven through the pair of them at times. And that would be alarming, slightly alarming, because you'd be hoping that there's a little bit more quality there, and it might well come. It just might be a matter of getting them some games, some minutes in the legs, etc. But yeah, maybe the pair of them have not fast tracked themselves into Brendan Rodgers' thinking. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Fraser, you'd assume that Trusty for £6 million will be Celtic's first choice centre back at some point. I know Scales is keeping him out at the minute, but again, a lot of money for Celtic.
Well, look, if his, I'll spit that out and try again. If his coming in for decent money has laid down the gauntlet and the challenge to Scales, and Liam Scales has properly stood up to it. I mean, I thought he was outstanding in the Champions League last week.
Yeah.
The shirt's his and Cameron Carter-Vickers beside him to lose. They are Celtic's established central defensive partnership at the moment. Bit interesting that Trusty has kind of that American international thing going on with Carter-Vickers. I wondered if that had maybe come into play somewhere down the line and they could form a solid partnership. I saw him a few times in the Championship last year, and I did think he looked a decent. He was one of them names that stuck, jumped out. I don't know, because it's an unusual name, but he kept catching my eye with his defending. So I thought straight away, I recognise that guy. I think he'll be a good defender. And I suppose, given that the price they've paid for him, sooner or later, you do expect him to come in and maybe partner Carter-Vickers. But right now, it's Liam Scales' shot to lose. And if he keeps performing like he has at the start of the season, he's not going to be shifted. Simple as that. It'll take an injury to shift him.
Well, if that was the chance for Trusty to have an addition, I'm not saying he's flunked it, but I don't think he's done anything that would make Brendan Rodgers think, right, it's time, I need to try and find a way of getting this guy into my starting 11. Scales, I've said it before, looks to be coming on leaps and bounds. He was a real solid contributor last season, but he seems to have had the Brendan Rodgers treatment, a little bit of magic dust. I see, since the start of this season, I think the improvement in Liam Scales has been vast.
Yeah.
And for me, Trusty would have to come into that team and been absolutely exceptional at the weekend. And let's get it right. They lost two goals at home to Falkirk. Not pinning that all on him, but that wasn't the addition that he'd been hoping for. So for me, no, there's no doubt in my mind that in Brendan Rodgers' mind, his preferred partnership at the centre of Celtic's defence will remain Cameron Carter-Vickers and Liam Scales for some time to come.
Yeah. Just in Trusty, to defend Trusty and all the guys that were thrown in for debuts yesterday, it's very, very difficult and almost unfair. Well, difficult enough to go in for a debut when it, at home in front of 50, 60,000, whatever. But to be thrown into a disjointed team where was there 8 changes?
A whole new defence, yeah.
A whole new defence, no cohesion. You just don't know each other's game. All right, you've been training together. That doesn't matter a jot really when you're thrown into the heat of battle against a Falkirk team who are the complete opposite, who've been playing together for years and looked like it, who haven't lost a league game for about 10 years. It's almost unfair to judge him in that kind of debut because he was part of a very disjointed team. And
fair comment, but my point is, Fraser, if in order for him to have planted a seed of doubt in Brendan Rodgers' mind in terms of his starting 11, his strongest starting 11, he would have had to come in there and starred and really looked like the finished article, as if he's straining at least to get into that first team, and he didn't do it. That's not to say that, as I said, with some more game time, more time in the training ground, he might well be the long-term solution for Celtic. But I just think there's no need to rush it because Liam Scales is performing, as I said, I think he's playing at a different level this season. So there's no need to rush anything. And I think that Brendan Rodgers will be very comfortable because all that he ever was looking for, all he ever asked for was the quality additions to the squad, which means in the event of a suspension or an injury, I can start feeding these players in and there won't be a big drop-off in quality. And I think, by the way, I think one very valid point there, Fraser, is it was disjointed. How much better would Trusty look if he's playing next to Cameron Carter-Vickers? because he is a key component. And maybe the next time we see Trusty getting a run out or a crack or a start for Celtic, it probably will be next to Cameron Carter-Vickers, and you might see a marked improvement in his performance level because of that.
I think
I mean, Schmeichel, Johnson, Carter-Vickers, Scales, Taylor. That's simply Celtic's back five at the moment.
That's the team, man.
And it's functioning well.
I feel like you've stuck up for Trusty. I feel like I should kind of stick up for Valle before we wrap up. I mean, Mark Fairfield there on Facebook saying Valle makes Bernabe look like Roberto Carlos. Someone in the comment section earlier said he makes Laxalt look like Roberto Carlos.
I do remember where Laxalt was. I wonder where he is now.
I know that was a time Celtic fans would probably want to forget about. But just to kind of echo what you said about Trusty, very difficult to make your debut in those circumstances. And as well, I don't think Luis Palma playing left wing is the greatest player at tracking back and doing his left back a favour. So,
and Valle was up against an absolute whippet. But it was the fact that was where all Falkirk's threat was coming from. That channel, either outside of Valle or inside and between him and Trusty, that's where Falkirk were exploiting Celtic. And that's, it's not saying a cause for concern along the lines of, oh no, we've spent badly here, these guys won't do. No, but does it indicate that they're ready to be fast-tracked straight into the first team, to take guys, regular performers out of there, to take their place, to improve the first 11? I don't think there was that. So it'll require more time as Celtic go about the process of building this squad. It is going to take a little bit of time, but they're in a very, very, very good place. And anybody that can't acknowledge that just now is not really looking at it properly.
Keith, do you know you also change colour when the lights go out there? Happened again. Somebody's very helpfully put pictures over the top of us here.
Thank you. I have no idea, but I'm having technical nightmares as per usual at Daily Record HQ.
Well, I think on that note, guys, that brings us to the end of Monday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Should say if you chimed in with questions, we really appreciate it. And we'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. Fraser, Keith.
The lights are going to go out here now. I'm going to be walking about like Elmer Fudd.
Keith, Fraser, thanks very much.
Cheers.
And thanks for watching at home.
Cheers, bye.